The U.S. Department of Homeland Security confirmed today U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has begun an immigration enforcement operation in Maine in what they call Operation Catch of the Day. The department says they are targeting, quote, the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens.
They say some of the charges those arrested are facing include aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and endangering the welfare of a child. While DHS did not specify how many people they have arrested or plan to arrest, they did release the identities of 4 people taken into custody on Tuesday. They say those arrested were from Sudan, Ethiopia, Angola, and Guatemala.
DHS also criticized Governor Mills, saying in part, Governor Mills and her fellow sanctuary politicians in Maine have made it abundantly clear that they would rather stand with criminal illegal aliens than protect law-abiding American citizens. We have reached out to Governor Mills' office for a statement and are waiting to hear back. Meanwhile, Democratic Representative Shelley Pingree giving her thoughts on the ICE operation.
We are very worried, and people in our state are very worried that they're going to do a broader sweep, that they're just going to show up at places of business or schools. We've heard from employers that people aren't coming into work, and we know from the schools that some students aren't coming to school. We're worried that if this continues to go on, it will interfere with our economy, it will hurt kids' ability to go to school, and people will resist, important medical appointments or other things that they need to get done just because they're afraid to go outside and worry that they might be picked up.
The mayor of Westbrook tells our media partner WMTW that ICE agents have been actively conducting operations and detaining people in Westbrook as well. A woman who ran for Westbrook City Council last year told the mayor that she saw agents arrest a pregnant immigrant from Ecuador this morning.